Have you ever wondered why regular Minecraft and Hypixel Skyblock are so different? In most situations, your best form of attack is of course going to be a melee hit with a sword or axe, or maybe a bow for those chickens that you just can't reach. But why is it so different in Skyblock? Skyblock being a game built off regular Minecraft. There's a huge different variety of melee weapons in Hypixel Skyblock. Some of them when upgraded setting you back a lot of coins. But the bottom line is, for the most part, if you ignore the damage values, they're all the same. I've touched on this before, and of course I've talked about many different weapons in the past. The changes to Berserk, I guess, gave kind of new purpose to, well, melee in general. But when you leave the confines of dungeons, it's pretty much back to the same. There's 4 Valkyries on the market, and pages and pages and pages and pages of Hyperions. This just shows that melee is dead and buried. And while the Valkyrie isn't really a great weapon, that's the point, it just should be. But are there actually any uses for melee weapons in Skyblock at the moment? Well, the answer in short is yes. Of course you have Berserk in dungeons, however, even though it was buffed, the actual class, it's still not very widely used. While using an Atom Split Katana, you can pretty effectively do Void Gloom Slayer, but you don't need to. You can still use a Hyperion or a Midas Staff and pretty much do it just as effectively. Well, I guess you've got Revenant Slayer, and then also Sven Slayer. You don't really have a choice in the matter for either of those two because neither of them take magical damage. Then Blaze Slayer, you could argue maybe a Daedalus Axe for, well, anything that you actually want to have a high amount of magic find for using a G-Drag. But none of these weapons are really being used because people want to use a melee weapon. They're being used because they don't really have another option, or because, well, it's way more efficient than other options. Now before we go any further, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS, it gets yourself 5% off. You should subscribe to the channel if you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer slayers and dungeon carries, so if you need carry someone's carry and make some coins, make sure to join. But the biggest issue at the moment is all melee weapons are the same. There's no real purpose to use one, and that's why nobody really wants to. Melee is kind of dead for the most part. And the proof is on the AH. We're going to buy the cheapest possible giant sword that's completely clean for 135 mil, and we're going to do the same for the Dark Claymore. What we have here is 2 weapons that are in direct competition, however relatively similar. The Dark Claymore costs 45 million coins more, deals the same base damage, deals an extra 100 strength, and also 30 crit damage, and 1 extra swing range. The giant sword has a right click ability that we're just going to ignore for the purpose because nobody really uses a giant sword for its right click ability. Let's damage test with both weapons. Our giant sword deals 309k damage, and our Dark Claymore deals 346. We benefit from 1 extra swing range on the Dark Claymore. Now, to be honest, the difference in price of these weapons used to be much larger. If you have an M7 completion and you're looking to do something like Sven, you might as well just pay the extra 45 mil and deal more damage per hit. But they're basically doppelgangers, they're the same weapon, this one's just a tiny bit better. There's no selling point. You get 1 extra swing range, which I guess you can maybe argue. Now for the Dark Claymore, we have to give some context. The Dark Claymore is a weapon that directly drops from the Bedrock chest in Master Mode Floor 7. It costs 150 million coins to unlock from the chest, meaning that if you sell it for 180 mil, it's only 30 mil profit. Master Mode Floor 7 is regarded as one of the greatest challenges in Hypixel Skyblock. If you hit the jackpot and get that Dark Claymore, remember you're unlocking a weapon from Master Mode Floor 7 for 150 million coins. That should be one of the best weapons on the game. After all, a Necron's Handle only costs 100 million to unlock, and you can obtain that through regular Floor 7 too. The Dark Claymore has almost been in the game for 2 years now. When it first released, it was selling for almost 700 million coins, and for the most part kind of settled for between 300 to 400 million. In the past 6 months, it's been on a steady decline. Now, this could be just purely because more people are able to do Master Mode Floor 7, which I'd assume is probably part of the reason why it's so cheap now. Therefore, more people dropping it. I guess the other reason is because there's not really that many people who want it. An influx in supply and pretty bog standard, relatively bad demand is always going to lead to the item decreasing in price. But why is this? Well, the issue is melee weapons. They're all the same. I'll go back to the Valkyrie. Okay, it's another variant of the Necron's Blade, and it's the worst variant of the Necron's Blade. It's geared to be a melee weapon. And if you look at the price and compare those stats to something like a Dark Claymore with the same enchantments, it doesn't make any sense to buy it. It's somewhat unique and it gives you a lot of base ferocity, but other than that, you probably won't see anyone running around with a Valkyrie meleeing mobs. It's just not going to happen. Now, it's clear that Hypixel have somewhat recognised this issue. hence, I guess, the introduction of swing range. But does it really change the way melee works? Now, there is ways they can fix the issue of melee weapons. First of all, the right-click ability on these melee weapons needs to be really good. Whether it's a right-click ability or not, or whether it's just a passive ability that's active on the weapon, they need something that sets them apart from everything else. Something that you might look at and go, that's a bit too overpowered, because everything else that's meta is already so overpowered. The fact that the Claymore doesn't have a right-click ability at all is just mind-blowing. A Dark Claymore is modelled off, a really, really heavy sword. What about just a right-click ability that once you right-click, you deal 4 times damage for 1 hit or something? That way you'd be able to one-tap Sven's really easy. I mean, don't get me wrong, for something like Sven's, you have to use a melee weapon anyway, so it's not going to change anything. It's just going to make it better. For something like a Valkyrie that is pretty much centered around ferocity, to me gives the impression of a pretty nimble weapon. They could maybe increase the attack speed cap when activating the right-click ability, or it could just be a passive ability on the weapon that's always active, meaning that you can hit way more than any other weapon, meaning more DPS. The issue we've got at the moment is, realistically, most of these weapons don't have great right-click abilities. Maybe the Shadow Fury is an exception. But it's as simple as, giant sword, okay, well we do that amount of damage, and Claymore, we do that much more, and maybe we'll do, a similar amount of damage with a Valkyrie, and we'll do way less with a Shadow Fury, and even less with a Livid Dagger. It's all based on damage stats. And it gets to a point where damage doesn't matter, because if you've got a good setup with a Claymore, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Well, there needs to be something that sets these weapons aside from each other than just giving them, 50 extra strength or 100 extra crit damage. Because what you have at the moment is a ton of melee weapons that, in essence, are practically the same, just slightly different damaging figures. The Terminator and the Hyperion dominate Skyblock, one being a short bow, which is an instantly shooting bow, and the other one being the Hyperion, where you basically just spam right-click and explosions occur. Neither of the best 2 weapons in the game are actually used for melee. And the proof of melee weapons just being underused, not really desired, not really great, underpowered, is kind of everywhere. When the melee variant of the Hyperion still can't get people to use the weapon, you've got an issue. Let alone the most expensive dungeon drop in the game from the most challenging dungeon floor. These weapons just simply need to be given more purpose. Anyway, let me know what you think of melee weapons in the comments. What could Hypixel do to kind of fix this issue? Or is it even an issue? Are some weapons just meant to not be that great? If you did enjoy today's video, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.